without further ado, let's go ahead and kick this panel off, and we can get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Please, after you, after you.
Thank you.
Roy could not make it. He was taken away on a family emergency, so I will be filling in. I'm sorry. Let's just do a round of intros. So I'll start with Andrew from Just.
Sure. Thank you, Eric, and I'm glad to be here with everyone. I'm Andrew Noyes. I lead global communications and public affairs for a company called Eat Just. It's the parent company of Just Egg, which is a plant-based egg company, and Good Meat, which is a cultivated meat company.
Oh, wait, hold on. One more. What got you in? What were you doing before this, Andrew?
Before this, I'm a recovering journalist. I was a reporter in DC for about a decade, so I've got DC chops like you do. And then I was in the consumer tech industry, so I was leading comms in the early days at Facebook and Uber.
We thought we'd talk a little bit about how the hell we got here, because everyone seems to come from a very different place. So anyway, next.
Hello again. I hope you all hear me. So I am NurGuven Kuzey. I know it's a little bit difficult name for everybody in here. So I am working for Orbelion Bio as Senior Process Development Engineer. I am one of the earliest members of the company, actually. And before coming to this place, like before coming to Orbelion, I was working in the biopharmaceutical and pharmaceutical industries for more than 15 years. Actually, my career started with being an ISO-certified taster. So
cool.
Yes, thank you. It was a great job.
What's the worst thing you've eaten?
Oh, I guess I cannot spell it over here. But that was a confidential stuff. But like I tasted so bad, I mean worse things, and I tasted great things. And I was just like doing working in the tasting industry for the food and beverages, and I tasted a lot of alcoholic stuff as well.
I'm surprised you remember.
Yes, sometimes I think about that, but some stuff is just like lost in my memories. Then I came to do, actually I was working in Turkey and the European side for most of the pharmaceutical companies. I started with, when I jumped to the pharmaceutical industry, I started with the small molecule drug development part, actually. Then I came to the large, and I jumped to the large molecule development, and then after a couple of years moving to the US, two of our co-founders, Samet and Patricia, just like reached me out and they asked me, Nor, we are thinking about this if you would like to join to us. And this is going to be kind of a company that we are creating meat. At the same time, we are doing that kind of like really great stuff in the company, and we would like to use your creativity. And I was like, yes, this is a great idea. I can use my tasting experiences, and I can use my small molecule experiences, and at the same time, large molecule experiences. Then I am here for the last 2 years.
And now you're here.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Hi, everyone. My name is Azamat Kokos. I'm a CFO and COO of Ivy Farm. We're a UK-based cultured meat company, started from pork, cultured pork. Company is now almost 60 people, all based in Oxford. So we actually been founded as a spin-off from University of Oxford by two co-founders. One is associate professor in Oxford University, and the other one did PhD in University of Oxford. I myself, by background, investment banker, did 10 years in different banks, including Goldman, Barclays, and was advising companies on various corporate finance transactions, M&A, IPOs, fundraisers. But after 10 years, got really bored, was always kind of thinking to move to a more kind of entrepreneurial role. And when guys at Ivy Farm reached out to me, I was really excited because it kind of gave me that extra boost of motivation, because obviously the mission is so cool, but also from R&D perspective would allow me to learn a lot, because at banking your learning curve becomes quite stale after several years. But also that's a tangible product. I was really thinking, what kind of company would appeal to me. There are quite a few servicing companies where you don't see actually the product online, marketplaces, betting platforms, et cetera, But here, because it's really tangible, that was really exciting.
Great, welcome.
Yeah, my name's Kris Chatrathi. I'm with Black & Veatch. For Black & Veatch, I do bioprocess solutions and first-of-a-kind technologies. And the most recent example is, I worked on the Callista methane to single-cell protein project, and, we built that in China, and they're basically operating now and hope to get product out very soon. Are you going to ask me what I did before this?
I would love, I'm dying, edge of my seat.
So prior to working in the biopharma, bioprocess area, I did explosion protection for process plants.
What?
I kept them from blowing up, But,
Okay, all right.
it's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I hope this is showing that you don't have to be just a scientist or engineer to get into this. You can come from a very wide group of professions before you get in here. Like Andrew said, I come from also DC. My name's Eric Schulze. I'm the Vice President of Global Scientific and Regulatory Affairs at Upside Foods. And I worked at the Food and Drug Administration. The last panel we heard about Aqua Bounty, Aqua Advantage Salmon, and that was the worst 6 years of my life because I worked on that application. I could tell stories from the non-legal perspective. Working for the US government was amazing overall, and from a policy perspective, it's fantastic. Okay, so I wanted to start with some really softball questions to the panel. How much is your cost per pound? Why isn't it called lab-grown meat? Can I see your IP portfolio? Also, do you have any trade secrets you'd like to share today? No, okay. So we're talking backstage, and I think a lot of what we're seeing as members of the community is this blending now as we're getting to commercialization of the technical capabilities of a company also with the financials and projections, and like when is it going to be a certain insert a percentage of a market share, of a on market, how much of us are going to make it, when are you going to raise your series? So I wanted to have a discussion around, and we can even use maybe some of the questions that were asked backstage. What would it take? What are we looking like projection-wise for volumes, for example, you were asked? If you want to recap that question, because I think it was so interesting.
Yeah, so when I think about commercial scale, I think we need to think in terms of millions of kilograms per plant, So I think I'm going to say it right out. It's like, the question was asked, well, when do we think we can get those million-kilogram type of plants, process plants out there? And I think it's going to be about 10 years from now. What I see is a lot of people doing pilot plants, but, earlier we had people talking about media, and just getting the media, full-scale media plant, I think is going to be at least 3 years. And then it's going to take another 3 years to build a large-scale cellular culture meat plant. And so I think at a minimum, it'll be 10 years before, customers are going to start seeing product.
Anyone disagreeing with that?
No, I totally agree. I think maybe even longer. So I'll give you an example. We, right now, at the pilot stage, so it's a 600-liter reactor. Obviously, output is quite small, hundreds of kilos, probably 100, 150 of kilos per month. So obviously, per year is just a couple of tons. But in terms of the large-scale facility, what we were planning for ourselves to produce 12,000 tons of meat from a large-scale facility, which is 1.6 million liters. Yeah, 1.6 million liters. And that's just one plant. But just to give you an idea, I think our projections was that just to get to 1%, we would need to have 80 to 100 of those plants. So it will take us 2 to 3 years to build only one plant. So you can count how many years it will take to build another 100.
Yeah, and just to add to that, my perspective is, earlier people were talking about a 1,000-liter bioreactor. If you look at biopharma, 10,000, 15,000-liter bioreactors that are doing cell culture, that's doable. So we as an organization, we as an industry, first have to get to that 10,000, 15,000 liters cell culture bioreactors. Then I really think we need to go beyond that to 50,000 liters, You know, so there's a lot of steps that we got to climb before we get to that.
So, adding to that, I also would like to approach from a different state to this conversation. So I am not a vice president, but I am coming from the real technical side of this work as well. So I would like to add that to be able to go beyond and to be able to think about going to the beyond from that part. 1,000 liters, 2,000 liters that we are talking. I definitely just would like to underline that we need to understand our cell types and their strengths and their weaknesses. Because of that reason, to be able to have the connection in between the technical team, since this is extremely novel area and it's still emerging, we just need to understand if you are going to go with the non-GMO part, or if I know so many scientists over here, they love working with the GMOs because it's easier, except the regulatory people.
Wait. I'm a genetic engineer and a regulator. I love both.
Yes, okay, that's great. Regulators normally don't like that, hate that actually because of thousands of, like hundreds of papers.
I'm not saying my team loves it if it comes in.
Yes. But if you are moving forward with the non-GMO option, we definitely need to understand our sales background and if they are happy or not actually being in that culture. I just wanted to add that on top of this conversation.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in from the good meat side. I think I don't want to be too repetitive on what's been shared here, but from where we sit, we're also at pilot or demonstration facility phase. And I think there's a really interesting question. We don't have to unpack it here, but a lot of people talk about, oh, we're at pilot stage this, pilot stage that, you know, this many liters, but there's really there's no standardization of what that means for a company, right? So we have been producing with a partner at the 1,200 liter stage. We are about to commission our pilot facility that has a 3,500 liter bioreactor. We're putting the finishing touches on a 6,000 liter bioreactor that we're going to ship to our facility in Singapore. And we're currently designing and making plans for our first large-scale facility that will be in the U.S. And the foundation for that, we believe, will be a series of 250,000 liter bioreactors. So it is a step-by-step process. I think there's a lot to unpack when it comes to, you know, the capacity that a particular company has at a particular stage, and there are so many I'm not a scientist, disclaimer, but there's so many challenges that come with scaling up, even from lab stage to pilot or demonstration stage, and certainly to commercial facilities.
Let me stay with that for a second. Back to you, Andrew. I want to hear your thoughts. Blending consumer into the practical and the engineering side, if you're given a choice to produce at, let's say, 1,000 liter, 5% PCV or something like that, and then you're producing an excellent product, but you have the opportunity to go to 50,000 liters, maybe lower productivity, and you got to blend it with a lot of plant-based products or what have you. Maybe it's just lower sensory score, let's call it that. What's your choice in that moment, like from an operations standpoint? Do you see them as the same product? Do you release them both? Are they, like, how do you position that? Because I don't think we're still wrestling with that as a field.
It's an interesting question, and you know, I will borrow from the other side of our company, Just Egg. It's an iterative process. It's an evolution with the product. We launched our first Just Egg product in market nationally in 2019. We're now about to launch version 5 of that, and we're never satisfied. It's always getting better. But I think I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, I think if we are actively serving this product that you mentioned, hypothetically, to consumers in a restaurant setting, say, and it's their first experience with cultivated meat, I would say we want to put our best foot forward. We want to have the tastiest, the most fibrous, most chicken-like chicken you could possibly have. So if we're producing at a smaller scale with higher quality, and it's our customers' first shot at this, I'd probably go with that and continue to work on the larger scale.
And that's the important point we were talking about backstage. I want to get to you in just a sec. But this idea of like putting our best foot forward, we're going to be on market soon. Like as an industry, we're going to be on market. And collectively, it needs to be the best products that we can produce, because if one of us puts a subpar sensory product out, it will affect all of us. And I know that's hard in a world of IP and around fences and not sharing as much as we could in those particular areas, but we can be transparent about trying to put together products that taste amazing. I don't want to skip you. Go ahead.
No, I agree, Eric. I think in our mind, I mean, Ivy Farm, how we were thinking about the product, in the end of the day, it's all about consumer, right? How they will perceive it. If you have, say, and I heard from different companies publicly say, we'll have 1 to, say, 10% of cultured meat in the end product. The rest will be plant-based. You can't really call it a cultured meat product, right? Majority.
Are we going into what is meat? Yeah. Have we had this discussion yet?
Exactly. So for the consumer, it will be, I think, in their mind, it will be very simple. It's still plant-based. What we were hearing from some of the strategic partners, potentially, some of the people kind of asking very provocative questions. How about mixing cultured meat with traditional meat? You're still kind of solving that bigger mission, right? You're reducing potentially consumption of traditional meat, but it still stays the meat, right? Because it's produced in the same way. So in my mind, I think that's probably even better approach. Not saying we're doing this, but if you would ask me what I'll go for, I'll probably go for the latter.
Let's follow up for that and for everyone else. You kind of teased it up, but like, then what is enough of a percentage to be meat in your, or anyone that wants to jump in? I'm super curious.
I mean, I can tell you what our threshold is because the Singapore government has told us. When we launched our first in the world cultivated chicken product in December of 2020 in Singapore, it was a lower percentage of what we're allowed to sell now. We got an additional a follow-on regulatory approval about halfway through this year, and or maybe at the end of last year. Time is a weird construct.
It's a flat circle.
Yeah. But essentially, right now, the meat, the chicken that people are eating in Singapore is 75% chicken, and the rest proprietary plant protein.
Yeah, so just one thing, you know, we're already doing hundreds of thousands of liters bioreactors that can do protein, okay? So protein, we would agree, is not meat.
I'm asking.
Yeah, so.
We're here to have that debate.
So then if meat to you is a steak, we're not doing steak, you know. So what is meat? You know, if it's the full amino acid profile that is nutritious for people, we could do that now in a 300,000 liter bioreactor.
But I believe on this stage we need to address the things like scaffolding or some other just like 2D cultures or maybe small molecule developments, bioinorganic molecular developments over there. Because of that reason, when we involve that kind of stuff, it's going to be more feasible to talk about probably that kind of thing.
So is meat a integrated cell, both lipid cells as well as muscle cells in a certain percentage? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if that's what meat is, then, you know, we're.
But again, I think this is a viable philosophical debate that's been had for a while, actually, because again, we have plant-based alternatives that also, and I think some of them would claim that they are meat as well because of the nutrition profile. And if you use nutrition profile as your sole criterion, you could make a lot of arguments. There's a regulatory definition for meat. There's a legal definition. There's a biological or physiological definition. And I think what we're finding is that there is a blending of those definitions that have to be weighted. The question is, how much do you weight any particular facet when you're defining it? It could be as simple as a percentage. Go ahead.
No, I agree. I think eventually for the consumer it will be taste. Right, plant-based, arguably not taste as real meat. So therefore there are companies in cultured meat space who are just doing cultured fat. It's believed to be that meat taste comes from fat, right? So if you mix cultured fat with some plant-based, it will probably taste a bit better than a purely plant-based product.
So a hypothetical situation where, again, you have a product and consumers, maybe it's not exactly the same nutrition profile, but consumers identify it as meat. Can consumers reverse engineer the definition then? Can they say, no, we believe this should be called meat?
Well, I think like people know the difference between chicken and salmon, right?
I'm making no presumptions on this stage.
So I'm saying people know the difference between chicken and salmon. So you can't call salmon chicken and you can't call chicken salmon. So unless you produce the specific species and the specific muscle cells and the specific fat cells associated with that particular species, then, you know, like the legal guys say, my definition would be, hey, that's salmon because it came from salmon cells, or shrimp, you know.
What if I started with a cell that was genetically salmon, but then I made it taste exactly like chicken? Did I win?
You wouldn't sell it.
No, I'm serious. So, well, yeah, I mean, like, we're getting to, so I would say I can break, I think right now, this field is in a what meat is phase. Like a recapitulation of the fundamental characteristics of a sensory experience related to meat. I think we can agree to that. There will come a time, and I think this will be an interesting, and I have no prediction on timing, of what we move into a phase of what meat can be. And that is where things get interesting, because I think the definitions we rely upon will be stretched or changed or challenged. And so I don't know, somebody in this room might be the first person to do that. It might be someone on stage, but I think again, it's gonna get down to legal, regulatory, and then consumer perceptions. But you're right, I think we can all agree, if consumers don't eat it, doesn't matter. And so that's the goal.
Yeah, and the answer might be even more simpler, right? So you can say, well, actually, the origin of that meat, it's an animal who wasn't slaughtered, then it's not meat. And then the battle is lost from just beginning.
So again, moving into, in the consumer space, looking ahead, obviously, I think the name of the space is evolving as the space evolves as well. And some of the things we found, Andrew and I were talking off stage around this idea of how even we're portrayed still as companies in the space around this notion of how the idea of what is appetizing to a consumer is different from potentially with press or certain members of the press, or for example, or this idea that it's still labby. And I wanted to know thoughts from you all. Is that something y'all think about when you're pursuing how you present yourself to the world? Is it something you don't care about, like that? You know, for example, lab coats, or the construction of a facility and how it's presented to the world. Like, how do you think about it? Maybe Andrew, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally it is very important, first and foremost, to be transparent about how we're making the meat that we're all making. And the fact that it starts in a lab is not dissimilar from most other food products we consume every day. I had a protein bar backstage that started in a lab. Diet Coke starts in a lab, but this particular industry, because of where it is in the chronology of the space and where it's come from and the fields that we've borrowed from, there is just this like people are captivated by the lab, and I think as companies get closer to market and have products to show and tell and taste, it's incumbent upon all of us to help reframe that narrative and show them. I mean, our pilot facility, our demonstration plant in Alameda, looks like a big beer brewery. And at commercial scale, all of these facilities are going to look like large-scale food production facilities. And when we plate it up for people, we want it to look, taste, smell, the whole sensory experience. We want it to be meat. So, yeah.
So I guess also, as we talked earlier today a lot in the different panels, to our approaches to consumer is also extremely important in so many aspects. Together, getting their ideas, what they think about this. Like, as a person who just like taught in the university for a very long time, like there's no differences, actually. There's so many differences between the layers of the consumers that they have different kind of questions. When I tell people that I am working in the cultivated meat industry, they mostly ask, like, I can get the very scientific-based questions, what we do in the lab, or I can get very just public-faced questions like, oh, are you creating a ship dolly in the lab? So that kind of questions and how can we approach the consumers is extremely important. In Orbelion Bio, we just like so far probably 4,500 people. We did the public search with the 4,500 people, and we are getting their insights from what they expect, what they see, what they understand from this tasting. On the other side, I'm also involving the tasting part. So before I taste, I never give the product to other consumers.
So
Can I,
please.
yeah. For some reason, I think we're a little too negative about consumer perception, because I think there's a lot more open-mindedness out there than we imagine. And I'll give you some personal examples. I just gave a talk on frontiers in bioprocessing, and let's say these are young professionals, and we started with, hey, there's 3,000 fermented foods out there, from yogurt to, soy sauce, all of these stuff out there. But here's the frontiers of bioprocessing. There wasn't anybody in the room that was like, they were actually excited that we would do non-slaughtered meat, And I have some, friends, I'm Indian by ethnicity, some of my friends from India, they go, man, when is this coming out? So they're ready for this non-slaughtered meat if we can produce it. And I'm sure there's a price point and things like that. But there's another aspect to this that we see all the time, is the sustainability aspect to these facilities. And I don't think, maybe I'm prejudiced by today's talk, but we don't really talk about the differentiation between the sustainability issues strongly enough with the way we could do this. This is a much more sustainable method of producing non-slaughtered meat, and I think people will accept it.
Yeah, I think so too. I want to loop back to this idea, though. But why do we see this sort of moniker of lab grown still hanging on? The association with lab. I'm curious what y'all have experienced.
Yeah, I think, Eric, probably it's from the fact that the industry is so nascent. So basically, we are focused on the back end of the industry right now. But when we'll have a bioreactors, big bioreactors, will be a front end, and I think it will shift very quickly. The consumer memory will be very, very short once they start seeing the bigger reactors, bigger volumes. If anything, it will be probably called brewed meat or something.
Yeah, I'll just add that again, our experience in Singapore has been varied. When we sell our product, whether it's at a fine dining establishment or a roadside hawker stand, or via Food Panda food delivery, which is like a DoorDash or Uber Eats of Asia, we're very good about collecting consumer feedback. It's a huge part of this process. It's a reason that we're out there selling product right now at a loss, is because that experience is really important for learning. And what we've encountered is that consumers age 30-ish or under have zero problem when they find out that when they find out that the meat that they're eating is grown in a large stainless steel vessel. They see it as a positive. But then, it's the older generations that you have to convince a bit. And my favorite example of that is one of our hawker owners. He owns a roadside stall. His name is Mr. Liu. His roadside stall has been in business for 75 years. We approached him and said, how would you like to put cultivated chicken on your menu? We had to explain to him a little bit about what cultivated chicken was, and he didn't get it, so we just gave it to him. We said, cook it, eat it. He cooked it, he ate it, end of discussion. He's a convert, and we did a pop-up at his hawker stand, and there was a line around the block of all demographics of people who wanted to try it.
So the lesson is get on market.
Get on market.
Okay. All right. End of conference.
Even at a small scale, because we also all need to be realists here. What we're selling right now is an incredibly modest amount of chicken. So it's one of the reasons that I was really excited as we talked as a panel before we got up here that we would change the name of this session from lab to shelf from lab to table, because it's going to be a while before we're on Safeway shelves, but we can be on tables at Mr. Lou's today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the global meat market, I don't know if Shapiro's out here. He could probably, there he is. You should just hop on a mic and say what you said for the question you asked about this idea of, I'll try to summarize it. This idea of how long would it be till we took over 1% of the global conventional meat market? What cultivated meat is doing that. And we had some interesting thoughts backstage. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so I said, greater than 10 years. I mean, 1% is still...
How many tons was it again? Shout it out, Shapiro.
100 billion pounds of conventional meat in the U.S. alone each year.
100 billion pounds in the U.S. alone. Thank you.
So 1% is 1 billion. And not having built the first million-pound plant, I don't think, it's going to be more than 10 years.
And what would shorten it? What would like just thinking through what could accelerate these technologies if you're just thinking creatively here with me for a second?
Yeah, I think we need to focus on unstructured meat. Second, we need to build 2 plants, one media plant next to a using a scale-up, scale-out type of thing. Focus on 50,000-liter bioreactors. And the other thing that I would ask my friend is, what is the grams per liter I can get out of that? And that should be the focus of the bioreactor studies. And yeah, I would do a they call it a biorefinery campus or something like that. We need to come up with some kind of...
Sure.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that we're talking about, biomass production, but that biomass has to taste good. And the connection between growing a lot of cells and its sensory experience is a white space for scientists here. If I were a scientist thinking about what do, I would 100% work in that area of establishing growing a lot of cells that taste good or have a specific taste or nutritional profile. Sorry, I wanted to make sure if you wanted to add anything to this.
No. I was only going to say maybe we are going to reach that point before 10 years, because some of the companies in this field, like us, actually, we were not on the stage like 2 years ago, but we are about to grow very fast as Orbillion Bio. So I guess we are going to reach that place very fast, maybe less than 5 years. But we definitely need to know what we are going to do, and media especially involves in the stage of this conversation. Media is a big conversation, big topic of these production facilities. Once we just understand that what is happening in our media, everybody can just define their own chemical structure, media, serum-free media, it's going to evolve and it's going to move fast every single day.
Yeah, and I know it's been said elsewhere, but we are all competing with the same global supply chain for media.
Exactly.
And then we are all competing with, in many ways, the biopharmaceutical industry, who also uses an overlapping section of that supply chain, almost certainly. And so that in itself is also a challenge that needs to be solved for. In terms of scale up, what are the other issues that or getting to market from a consumer perspective, I'm curious, that has been nagging you or you've been thinking about in terms of just as you grow your businesses and operations? What's top of mind for you right now in terms of the scale up that you are thinking about?
For me personally, well, fundraising. I don't know if it's time to switch to fundraising.
Sure, let's do it.
Well, because, it's obviously huge capex, right? To build a big plant, I think we've seen the numbers, hundreds of $1 million. Obviously, nowadays, environment is very tough. Going back to VCs to get that funded is becoming tougher and tougher. And in my personal view, working in banking, I think it will probably take another 2-3 years before it actually comes back to what it was in 2021 in terms of bullishness for pre-revenue businesses. So that's why I think it's very important that non-dilutive capital will be unlocked to start building these large facilities. There are actually a couple of companies already who are kind of thinking about project financing, right? Finding the capital who will be longer term, ready to take kind of losses in the several years before these projects actually start bringing some revenues back. Obviously, government-wise, we haven't seen much support, for now at least. Yes, there were some announcements from US government will be supporting. I think in Europe there were some programs announced. In Netherlands, for example, very recently, they were announced, I think, $60 million, but it's still peanuts, I think, for what should be done. So the question is, yeah, who will be that source of capital who will be funding this? That's what we're trying to solve, at least at Ivy right now.
And also, I would like to add on top of whatever I share all the informations. I agree. And also, we need to recognize the importance of the small business plans too. Like when we have the partnerships with the real food industry partners, it's going to be like it's going to make our product on the shelves easier and maybe in the faster place. So. As Orbillion Bio, we also had the publicly announced maybe a couple of weeks ago, like we had the Luton Food partnership, and they are the biggest distributor in the European area for the food. And we are going to distribute our premium meat with their help on the European market, and we are going to also get benefit from their scaling up and the regulatory perspectives and experiences. Because of that reason, probably this kind of small business plans and the partnerships are going to help us a lot in the near future.
Do we think, I agree that with the federal funding is going to have to, and from each jurisdiction is going to have to increase. The government has to, when government gets skin in the game, then VCs can become more bullish as well, because they see this as a long-term investment. Do we think also that there's a potential winnowing that will happen? You know, there's somewhere around 100 cultivated companies that have sprouted up in different various incarnations. Do we think, I don't know, I'm curious specifically in your perspective as well, like, will we see sort of a withering, a series of acquisitions? Like, how do you think this is going to play out as technology starts to develop and companies are starting to go, ooh, I think that might work for us?
Yeah, Eric, exactly the question I was thinking before the panel. So what will happen in the next 2 years, right? Because definitely funding will dry out. I honestly think, again, from the background, this is not super cash requiring businesses, right? I think what will probably happen, people will just focus on R&D, because still lots of things should be optimized right in the lab scale. So the cash burns, obviously, I think will reduce. Companies who manage to raise will probably be around it for another, say, couple of years. But still, I think the question will still be there, what happens after the 2 years? How do we scale the technology?
So I just wanted to add one thing for both funding and small business. I wouldn't discount the partnerships with large companies. There are a lot of established companies that have their own venture capital arms. And I think if once a particular company has a mature technology, partnering with them both from a feedstock standpoint and a distribution standpoint will help this idea, this product grow. And
borrowing from the more traditional tech viewpoint, are there business models that people out here could be thinking about, or for in the cultivated space, that would be explicitly matured to an acquisition that you would advise someone to do? Like, what is an area in this space that could be acquired? It would be purpose-built for that.
Yeah, so what I see technology companies doing is, they carve out their specific area. I'm going to say it could be a proprietary bioreactor, and obviously the cell lines. And they will borrow or supplement that expertise with, you were talking about flavors and stuff like that. There are a lot of companies out there that know how to do flavors. So you could partner with a company like that to do the downstream blending, and there are lots and lots of companies that can do meat packing and so forth. So that type of technology isn't your core intellectual property. So plus, I'm going to tell you, a lot of startup companies, most startup companies, don't know how to operate these large-scale plants. Okay, just the number of people you need, there's just so many complications. So partnering with a company that has already built and operated large-scale plants will give you an advantage. So I think
that's interesting, and it sparks another question in terms of the pipeline of talent as well. and again, not knowing the makeup of the companies, but we at Upside have a mixture of people that obviously have come from the biopharmaceutical industry, from the food industry, from the wine industry, like lots of different places, right? I'm super curious to hear from all of you, like, how have you found bringing that disparate talent in? Has it been hard to integrate into one culture around cultivated meat? Has it been easier? You know, is there just unexpected surprises that you found that have made it really wonderful? Because again, someone who builds vaccines for a living may not think about like the way food tastes, and someone who does food for a living may not consider the design, you know, an aseptic design for a facility. I'm super curious what y'all have thought about this. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, for our company, we had a bit of a head start. We had the advantage because we had a plant-based egg product in market and a team that we hired to both create a plant-based egg, but also sell it broadly into retail and food service, and do beautiful marketing and design around that experience. And so it's been really interesting for us seeing how our team is now being able to expand that thinking beyond the plant-based egg space to this whole new product category that we'll have in market. And I know that our sales teams are very excited about it, and when they talk to their customers in retail and food service, they're very excited. But you know, for us, we did have that entry point of a compelling plant-based product category that we could kind of build on.
So in our company, in Orbillion Bio, maybe you already know, we have 3 co-founders, and 3 of them are immigrants, all of them. So from the very beginning, since I can confidently talk about this conversation, talk under this topic, I was very initial person, employee of the company, and I was also immigrant. I am also immigrant. From the very beginning, we are really focusing on a very diverse environment in our company, both technically and culturally. Because of that reason, when we hit the people on this, when you talk with the new talents, who are coming from the pharmaceutical industries, or some of them are coming from the mechanical engineering part, or some of them coming from the very other relevant but somehow irrelevant places or the technical backgrounds. When we talk with them during the hiring stages, so attracting their talents and their expertise is extremely important for us, both culturally, again, and also technically. When we do that, we are just combining every single expertise area of our employers on the one plate, of our employees on the one table, and we are just trying to create a bone from that, skeleton from that, and we are getting benefit from every kind of people's expertise area in the company. So once they realize that they are really heard and they are really understood about what they are trying to do in the technical area or in the financial area, whatever it is, they are trying to just give more and contribute more about this science and the field. So all the things are extremely important. We are not trying to hire people only from the pharmaceutical industries or biopharmaceutical industries, but we recognize all of the other people's technical expertise.
Yes, so we hire people from everywhere, and each one of our projects tends to be unique. Some of them are feed plants, some of them are food plants, some of them are chemical plants. But what I want to say is I think people that we see have good science and engineering fundamentals. They're adaptable, and they will do fit for purpose. So when we look at a plant like this, we understand, I think somebody put hey, here's the FDA side and here's the USDA side. But yeah, we do look at here's the cell culture side. And, people understand that the way you design a bioreactor and the piping around the bioreactor has to take a different type of care than, say, farther downstream, or the media tank, or the wastewater tank, right?
Right.
So
right.
I find most people are very, very adaptable to the purpose for that particular application.
It's super interesting, and I wanted to also follow up on this with the idea of, building an intentional culture at your companies. I'm super curious, if there's sort of guiding principles for the particular cultures that you're trying to build. Again, since we're coming from such diverse backgrounds, I'm wondering if we all incidentally landed on the same thing. Anyone want to jump in? What are some of the guiding principles for the culture you're trying to build at your job?
Well, sorry, I'm going to go with, at Black & Veatch, we have this core set of principles, and it's called Aspire, but one of them is, be curious. So, if you come from the pharmaceutical background, well, be curious about how a food plant gets cleaned. I'm going to leave it at that. Otherwise, I'm going to start evangelizing.
No evangelizing. Anyone else? I know you have something you want to show us. Did you want to show us?
Yeah, well, I should have plugged that when we were talking about consumer perception, but let's loop back to consumer perception because I brought a video of consumers in Singapore reacting.
Seamless transition.
Reacting to cultivated chicken at one of those hawker stalls. Go for it.
Smells like chicken. See if it tastes like chicken. Wow, look at this.
Thank you. Let's dig in.
Cheers.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a cultivated meat, which at first I thought that it was like, plant-based or vegan, but it's actually not.
The cells are alive.
The cells are alive.
You take it from the chicken to make this. So basically there's no live chicken involved.
When I bit into it, it was really soft.
The texture's fantastic.
Flavor towards chicken.
I mean, I would never have known. You know what I mean?
It's chicken.
You like it?
I mean, the flavor is incredible.
It is so tasty, right?
I used to do cell culturing in the lab, so I used to grow cells.
So you could have grown one of these?
And like we talked about, I think texture is like the most important thing.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like because there's so many people that I think they fall short with that, but it's really great.
I feel so comfortable eating it with the idea that we didn't have to kill the chicken for it.
Wow.
It's great.
Brilliant, brother.
It's not like chicken.
It is chicken.
Right. It's not a vegetarian product. It is chicken.
Guys, this chicken satay is so good.
So great. Chicken. Like we talked about, I mean, it's the future.
I wish we could listen in on all of those conversations that people have when they try it for the first time, because all of them are like that. And it's friends explaining to their mother or their aunt or their sister that this is actually chicken. No, it's not plant-based. No, there was no animal killed. So it's just a really fun experience to watch unfold. Thank you for indulging me.
Hopefully next year there's just a whole bunch of us showing splashy videos. So in terms of just limited prognostication, we don't need to go 20 years into the future, but for the next, let's say 2 to 3 years, what do you think in the cultivated meat space in terms of just business maturity, industry maturity, what are the milestones you're seeing that are going to happen or you think need to happen for this to individual companies to be on market or just this to become establishing a foothold? We'll assume consumers actually like them because I know everyone's going to say the same thing on that. But what other things need to happen technically or as an industry we need to be coalescing around or establishing?
Yeah, my thing is focus on the 10,000 liter scale. I think
Say more. 10,000 liter scale.
Well, I see a lot of companies talking about 100-liter scale bioreactors and stuff, but I think we need to think about the 10,000-liter scale. I'm not discounting the flavor profiles and the downstream blending and things like that. So, and I know there's scaffolding, and I think that scaffolding is a much harder problem to solve. But in order to have meaningful volumes, we have to get to 10,000 liter scale cell culture bioreactors. I don't think we understand, I'm going to call it the hydrodynamics, the gas to liquid mass transfer, all of those bioreactor parameters that I think about at the moment, because when I ask those questions, nobody has any answers. If I say, what is a KLA that we should be designing to? What's your agitator? What's the heat transfer? Nobody has any answers for those. I mean, you guys probably do, but,
I'm going to move on. Actually, I'm super curious from Andrew as well on like messaging breakthroughs that need to happen. Like, what do you see down the road? just like the way it's perceived or the way we're talking about it.
I thought you said for this part we were going to suspend disbelief and all consumers were already into it. But we could maybe roll that back a little bit.
No, but we're going to get, there will likely be, not everyone is a fan of this as much as we like to pat ourselves on the back. But so, I mean, we're going to get constructive feedback. We're going to get unfair feedback. How are we going to deal with that as an industry from your perspective? You're a communications professional.
I think what a lot of us in the industry have tried to do a good job of is educating people about what this industry is and what products we're making long before a product is in market. I think a lot of the companies here today, individually and collectively through groups like the Alliance for Meat, Seafood, and Poultry Innovation, which is our trade group in the U.S.
Join. You are in the U.S.?
Yes, absolutely. ampsinnovation.org. I think we've tried to do a good job of explaining to the world what it is that we're doing. We've invited, a number of companies have invited media in to taste it and share their experience about what that was like with their viewers or readers. But it's not enough. One of the things that we did, again, in Singapore was beyond having these experiences for people to taste it, we took out big billboards. We did a lot of advertising. You have to try to get people where they are and get them at multiple places and also learn what resonates. I think one of the things that we maybe haven't done a great job of at the industry is connecting what we're doing to some of the biggest issues facing our society right now. We have been in a global pandemic that was caused by zoonotic disease. A lot of consumers don't connect the dots between zoonotic disease and how zoonotic disease happens. It passes from an animal to a human.
And slaughter of animals.
And slaughter of animals. So I think that's an important topic. Food security is another one. I mean, the more conversations we have with policymakers around the world, and even domestically, the more we're hearing over the past couple of years is around food security. And I think coming up in a couple of weeks, the UN Climate Change Conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, is going to have food systems change and food innovation as a formal focus for the very first time. And Good Meat is going to be there serving our cultivated chicken for the very first time outside of Singapore, because we want these heads of state, these ministers of environment and sustainability, to taste it for themselves and become invested in this technology and become supportive of it.
And I believe documentaries on Netflix is going to be extremely helpful for all of us. And probably not product labels, not to skip that. The importance of them is extremely important for all the companies in this field.
Wonderful. Well, before we turn it over to questions, I wanted to ask you all, I asked backstage as well, what, to the audience, the things you wish you'd been taught about before you'd gotten into this space? Like, what's a lesson you'd like to impart on, I just wish someone had told me this before I got here, before I went on this journey? So I also feel like, again, we all come from different areas, and I think we have a lot of interesting advice to impart. So I'll just go straight down the line. How about that? Oh, you're going to pass immediately? I have nothing of importance to tell you.
There's too many things that I wish I'd have known before. It takes a lot of us. You know, I think it takes a lot of disciplines. It takes finance. It takes biology. You know, there's just a lot of people working together to do this. And if there's one thing that I wish I would have known 10, 20 years ago is, hey, how to work with the accountants and, you know, the scientists. That's what I would.
And why? Like, why did you think that? You wish you had done that? Just, it was a skill set you didn't have and you wish you had, or speaking a different language, basically?
Well, yeah, I mean, no, it's not the different language as much as, like, you know, when you get your PhD, you know, you're focused and you're analytical. Man, what's in front of me is what I think about. I don't want to talk to lawyers, you know. And
ooh, I'm sorry. Lawyers here. There's a lot of them. Sorry.
But I know as I grew that I needed to talk to lawyers. But that's not a skill. Nobody ever says that to you when you're in that thick book, you know, that's.
The lawyers are saying, I loathe the day that I interacted with a PhD.
You know how many NDAs you've made me sign? Go ahead.
No, I think for me personally, it was when I was hired a year ago. It's just a year, right? I've been in the industry. I was thinking it's easier. It's much more complex, turned out. And I was thinking it's sooner to the market, to be honest. I was thinking it's a couple of years max. Now it turns out more than maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years before we see actually large-scale facilities. And like with any breakthrough technologies, like you fix one thing, something else comes up, right? It's in this business. We're solving cell lines. Now we need to work with media. We solved media problem. We now need to work with the bioprocess. And I think it will go on and go on for the next several years.
I've heard it described, because I'm a fake engineer, by being a genetic engineer. I'm not a real one. It was described to me by a real engineer is that this industry is in a collective integration hell right now. It's all trying to figure out how the pieces work together, and when you fix one, something else doesn't. And not just the technology, but the business model, and trying to work through how we're going to message out to consumers, unless you're just in your own market. But I'm curious also, what did you learn in this particular?
I always thought that before joining this company, I wish I could knew every single cell type, especially the progenitor ones. But I learned a lot throughout this process. And like combining chemical background and molecular biology background and also engineering background and also mechanical engineering background is kind of, as you said 2 minutes ago, just it's extremely important. This is a very diverse area that we all need to contribute to be able to have our products on the market. So, yes.
Wonderful. Andrew?
Yeah, I guess for me, this is my first time. This role is my first time in the food industry broadly, having come from DC in the policy world and then consumer tech, smartphone apps. And it was a double learning curve for me because I not only had to learn the food industry, both retail and food service, but then I had to learn the science behind what we're doing on the cultivated meat side of our business, and also on the plant-based egg side. But I am just like humbled every day, and so fortunate that we have an incredible R&D team who is patient and will work with those of us on the PR, marketing, business side of the operation to ensure that we understand the science behind what we're bringing to market. Because if we don't understand that, we're not going to do a good job communicating it to consumers, the media, the public, and we won't be successful. So,
yeah, filling the gaps in between the financial part or the management part and also technical part is one of the most important things of this field too.
Agreed. Agreed. Great. Well, wonderful. We're going to turn it over to questions. So if you got some on any of the things we've talked about, I'm super curious to hear it. First question coming in from Upside.
Hi, Jessica Helper, Upside Foods. Thank you. That was a wonderful talk. I think a lot of us on the commercial side, I work on product at Upside, know that we are going to have many optimizations of our products, especially as we get closer and closer to parity. And that is fine. It's a new technology, but you know, I come from traditional food, I come from CPG. We know that consumers can be unforgiving sometimes, even if they're very excited by this technology. So how do we make sure we're taking them on this journey as we improve this process over the next 5 to 10 years?
wow.
Jump in, jump in.
You're welcome.
Jump in.
It's a good question. When you started to ask the question, the first thing that flashed into my head is every week in Singapore, we invite people to what we call our immersive dinner, and it happens at the Marriott Tang Plaza, and people come together and they enjoy a multi-course meal of our chicken products, and they learn. There's a whole audio-visual experience that they have to learn about it. And right now in Singapore, we're serving our V2 version of our chicken. it's delicious, right? It's really good. The texture's not quite there yet. The V3 that we're going to be launching soon and debuting at COP in Egypt is miles ahead of where we are now. But one of our guests posted on Instagram about her experience eating cultivated chicken for the first time, and I was watching it this morning, and she was going on and on about it, and she did a close-up of it, and I was like, oh, please don't do a close-up, because the texture is not there. But just, a couple months from now it will be, and then come back and eat it again and do your close-up again and post it on Instagram. But I think, I think consumers, especially with products, innovative alt-protein products, they're becoming more used to these product categories getting better over time. I grew up eating veggie burgers in the 80s. They were nothing like the Impossible Burger is today. And so I think, and the plant-based milks that we have now, and hopefully someday a great plant-based cheese, it's going to be an evolutionary process, and I think consumers will come along for the ride because they're hopeful and they're excited that these products will come to market and just get better.
And I think a lot of the things that we end up figuring out will bleed over into other adjacent fields in ways that probably almost certainly can't predict. Other food producers or alternative, pick your adjective, will figure out how to use that in a way that will make their products better. I'm sure we'll be industrial fermentation for something we can't conceive of today, but you'll figure out how to do it.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? We'd love to hear. Alex says one more question, so 2 more questions.
Yeah, I'm Benjamin Zamanian. I'm a business from Bako, based in UAE. So on my path to cultivated meat, I was thinking about something which tastes like meat, feels like meat, looks like meat, soups like meat. So that was a thing. That was my kind of Bible how to get to the path, how to get to the cultivated meat. But my question is, if you want to say that, what is the problem? What is the problem that we try to solve right now? What is that? Why do we care about cultivated meat, and what is the problem that we try to solve by cultivated meat?
I'll answer. Hopefully it's the same thing, so that we have a planet to inhabit.
And also I can answer from the different standpoint. So our company is aiming, working actually across creating some primary beef from the Wagyu or from the elk, the heritage breed beef. These kind of meats, especially in the developing countries, is extremely difficult to reach. And even in the United States, so many consumers cannot go to a butcher shop and cannot find that kind of, or cannot actually afford that kind of meats. This is kind of another approach that we would like to make it accessible for everybody, this kind of heritage breed meats as well.
Okay. Yeah, my answer to you is, I think about 1 to 2 billion, maybe 2.5 billion people are eating pretty well. The other 5 billion people right now aren't eating as well as everybody in this room. So they need their protein, and we need to find a way to get it to them, so all of the people on the earth are healthy.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to squeeze one more in. One more.
Well, first of all, thank you for the panel. And my name is Ling Shen. I'm from Cytonich. Since we're talking about the commercialization of the technology, so my question, and I think at one point you guys have already touched this for a little bit, but just want to know further, right now, due to the cost and scalability issues, the chicken nuts, let's say from the Good Meat Inc., the price is actually a little bit high, right? Compared to the other chicken nuggets. So I wonder, what is the sustainability of this business model about the revenues and profits, and how do the investors view the sustainability of the business? Because I think one of the panelists also mentioned about fundraising has been a big issue, which is gonna, be critical in terms of promoting this industry forward or not. So I wonder, what's your experience working with investor, and what's your take on the market trend, and how do they support the sustainability of this business? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Well, definitely for investors, we need to be able to demonstrate this profitable model. In our own modeling, we, I think, have basically launching the product as a premium, so similar to Good Meat here, later this decade. But eventually we need to get to below $5 per kilo Well, we're in Europe counting in kilos, because yeah, cost of meat there probably what 6, 7. So you need to be at parity or lower, so it'd be profitable. But that's what we are hoping to reach. I think we have a very detailed roadmap how we can reduce the cost of that kind of parity line. Obviously, media is the primary cost driver, and we have very detailed kind of planning, all the levers, how we are going to reach that. I think we had panels here before about basal media, obviously kind of quite advanced already in terms of reducing the costs. Very really good innovation going on around growth factors. We've seen quite a few companies here in the conference who can produce using different expression systems. We also have very interesting exclusive license from similar companies where we can produce some of these growth factors at 1,000-fold cheaper what we've been buying before. So I think, yes, there is a way, basically, to get to profitability in this business model.
There is a way. Thank you. And that was thank you for the question. Join me in thanking our wonderful panelists today.